I threw out my underwater camera along the shoreline over here. Let me show you what happened. There's the shoreline. The first thing to note when you throw out along a grass line is how incredibly dense it is down near the surface of the marsh. Look how thick this is right here, and think about the challenge of trying to work a plastic bait through this, much less the live bait that I was using. Now, watch what happens as I try and move the bait back towards me. Look at all the mud and dust, ocean dust, that it kicks up. And think about what that's going to do to your presentation if you're using a bottom rig. It's going to throw up a huge cloud. Look how hard it is to see my live bait as it swims through the muck. Next, it was educational to me to find out what happens to my bait once it's out there. You know, bait gets chewed up, and I've tended to always blame these guys, these crabs, for the problem. But it's really not them. It's the pinfish. The pinfish will come in and focus on your bait and just peck it apart. So quit blaming the crabs and try and keep the bait up above the surface of the marsh, because then it'll be less likely for the pinfish to create this mess and destroy your bait. This is amazing footage, and it really emphasizes to me the need to use a float to keep your bait off the bottom. The next interesting thing I discovered was that the green light for low visibility that shines on this camera incessantly attracted fish. And that confirms to me what I've thought for a number of years, that using these small LED lights associated with your hook is going to attract fish as opposed to repel them. So I'm now a believer in always putting one of these LEDs on my rig. The peck, peck, peck on that bright green light was just incessant. Here's the first fish activity I had of the day that almost led to a catch. The problem with these stingrays is they'll come up, they'll grab your bait, and then they just don't run with it. So you don't really know if you've got a strike until you start reeling it in. And that was the case, not with this one, because he chewed up the bait and got away, but with the next one, and that's going to be interesting to show you. It wasn't long before another one showed up. You can see him approaching back here in the rear. And I'm going to speed this up because this hit took a little bit while to happen. He sneaks up on the bait, he sits on it just like the last guy did, grabs it, chews it, and then swims off. And I had no idea that I had a fish on until I started to reel it in and wanted to check to see if my bait was still there. It's interesting the way these stingrays operate just like a flounder. With a flounder, you don't know they're on until you feel that heavy weight at the end of your line, and even then you have to wait a bit to make sure the flounder totally eats it. But I eventually got this guy into the boat where I could release him. Pretty cool footage. Interesting what you can see when you have one of these cameras. I usually catch pufferfish in the surf, but clearly here's a puffer swimming around back in the marsh, happy as can be, checking everything out. And a standard fish comes by, there's a black drum, but this is really cool coming up. Here's a ghost shrimp digging its way down to the mud flats. Cool. Comments? Throw them down below. Thanks.